For years, Vladimir Putin has complained the U.S. and West have lied to Russia and have forced him to take action. You promised us in the 1990s that NATO would not move an inch to the east, he said just weeks ago. You cheated us shamelessly. Michael McFaul is the former U.S. ambassador to Russia.
Putin has said the West, the United States, is provoking us, provoking me.
That's ridiculous. Let's be clear. Nobody's provoking Putin.
This was how Europe was aligned at the peak of the Cold War, split between willing NATO allies in blue to the West and in red, countries that the Soviet Union used brutal force to keep in line with them. But when the Soviet Union fell, these Eastern European countries, now free, aligned with the U.S. and NATO. Russia's sphere of influence and its geographic buffer against NATO now shrunk considerably. 5 NATO countries even border Russia, and many now host U.S. military bases. And Ukraine? It sits here, almost alone between Russia and the West.
Too many people are believing that this is somehow about NATO expansion, when it's really about an unprovoked military invasion should Putin decide to go in.
Many are wondering why Ukraine and why now?
Well, why now? I think because President Putin has been obsessed with bringing Ukraine back into subjugation to Russia. Putin believes that the Slavic nation, of which he considers Russians and Ukrainians to be part of a single nation, was unfairly and incorrectly broken up during the collapse of the Soviet Union, 1991.
A full-scale invasion would likely be the biggest conflict in Europe since World War II.
And it could likely destabilize international markets. On Friday, as tensions rose, the S&P 500 plunged nearly 2%. That's a drop of $2,500 for the average American's 401k.
And with Russia, a huge provider of oil to the world, gas prices are likely to go high.
Breaking news on Russia and Ukraine. Some major developments today. The Ukrainian government reports cyber attacks have hit its defense ministry and 2 of its largest state banks. At the same time, Russia appears to pull some troops back from the Ukrainian border in steps forward to de-escalate. And this morning, Russian President Vladimir Putin weighs in on the state of diplomacy. We're going to hear from President Biden later this afternoon. ABC foreign correspondent James Longman joining us now from Moscow to break it all down for us. James, a lot happening today. Let's go ahead and start with this cyber attack on Ukraine. It's breaking this afternoon. What do you know?
Well, very little at the moment, Kira. Ukraine's National Cybersecurity Agency has said that this attack has meant that the Ministry of Defense website, the Armed Forces website, and the website of 2 of its major banks are down. They're currently without service, but these are the public-facing parts of the website. It's unclear what other parts are down, but they're not currently accessible. The agency has also said that people's money is safe, so that's not been accessed. Obviously, this has got people worried because these are the kinds of websites you might target if you're planning to do something like attack a country. So we don't know what's going on at the moment. It could be that there are other bad actors involved trying to cause mischief, but at the moment, that is all we do know about that for the time being.
Well,
Kira?
definitely a lot yet to try and figure out as this is all happening day by day and all these different developments. And let's talk, speaking of developments, these troop withdrawals. How significant is that, James? And what did Putin say with regard to, is he really, is this diplomacy pushing forward toward that, a real possibility? It's kind of hard to figure out what he means at this point.
It absolutely is, Kira. It's always difficult with Vladimir Putin. I mean, he did give his sort of biggest hint yet that this troop withdrawal is real. He actually called it a partial...
Today, I'd like to provide an update on the crisis involving Russia and Ukraine. From the beginning of this crisis, I have been absolutely clear and consistent. The United States is prepared no matter what happens. We are ready with diplomacy, to be engaged in diplomacy with Russia and our allies and partners to improve stability and security in Europe as a whole. And we are ready to respond decisively to Russian attack on Ukraine, which is still very much a possibility. For all the events of the last few weeks and months, this has been our approach, and it remains our approach now. So today I want to speak to the American people about the situation on the ground, the steps we've taken, the actions we're prepared to take, and what's at stake for us and the world, and how this may impact on us here at home. For weeks now, Together with our allies and partners, my administration has engaged in non-stop diplomacy. This weekend, I spoke again with President Putin to make clear that we are ready to keep pursuing high-level diplomacy, to reach written understandings among Russia, the United States, and the nations of Europe to address legitimate security concerns, if that's his wish. Their security concerns and ours. President Putin and I agreed that our team should continue to engage toward this end, along with our European allies and partners. Yesterday, the Russian government publicly proposed to continue the diplomacy. I agree. We should give the diplomacy every chance to succeed. And I believe there are real ways to address our respective security concerns. The United States has put on the table concrete ideas to establish a security environment in Europe. We're proposing new arms control measures, new transparency measures, new strategic
Trey Yingst is there live for us. So, Trey, seems to be some breaking developments at this hour. What are you hearing?
Sandra, absolutely. A lot of breaking developments this evening out of Ukraine. The important underlying point to remember here is that nothing is certain in war. There's a lot of information going out from the Russians right now, a lot of information going out from the Ukrainians. But what we know is Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has declared a national day of unity on Wednesday, the 16th of this month. And he's going to be actually raising the salaries for Ukrainian troops temporarily. And he is calling on people here in Ukraine to come together amid this threat of a Russian invasion. But remember, everyone in this conflict has to speak to their civilians and their people. And that's exactly what Zelensky is trying to do. I actually talked with the president over the weekend when he was visiting some Ukrainian National Guard drills near Crimea. And I really pressed him on this idea of intelligence and what information he has seen from the Americans and whether or not he disagrees with those assessments from the Biden administration. And at first, he was quite cagey with the information. He was sort of trying to dodge the question. But when we really drilled down into it, he said what he really thought. And he thinks there is different information out there. He has not really been convinced by that Western intelligence. And we've seen a real sense of calm here in Kiev and across Ukraine. We were extremely close to the border with Crimea, an area of land that was taken over by the Russians in 2014. It was annexed by President Putin, and we didn't see any troops. We didn't see tanks. We didn't see what you would expect to see ahead of a military invasion, despite the reports that it will take place on Wednesday. So it's important to kind of step back from the brink here and look at this from a 30,000-foot view. And the reality is no one knows what is going to happen. But as we do know, Ukrainian President Zelensky says he's been told Wednesday is the date, and he's trying to bring the Ukrainian people together ahead of that potential invasion. Sandra, Trace?
But we begin in Eastern Europe, where U.S. officials say Russia has moved some weapons into possible attack positions. Meanwhile, Moscow says some of its troops are pulling back from the region, but large-scale drills are still ongoing. Charlie D'Agata joins us now with the details on that. Charlie, good morning. Good to see you. So explain to us. We understand that the Russian government and the Russian Foreign Ministry has says that they are sort of de-escalating things. But what are you seeing on the ground?
Well, you know, Vlad, that is the question. What does de-escalation mean? We'll get into that in just a second, but I'll tell you where we are now. This is Lviv, where the U.S. Embassy has moved to because of that huge Russian troop buildup along the border. They're here temporarily for security reasons, but as you said, conditions here are confusing. There has been a dramatic and worrying shift in Russia's readiness to attack in the past 48 hours. In an overt show of force, troops have stepped up military drills in the region. A U.S. official tells CBS News that Russia has now moved rocket launchers and long-range artillery into firing positions. New satellite images show ground troops moving from staging areas toward combat positions and newly deployed bombers. And yet, the Russian Ministry of Defense released this footage, claiming to show the pullback of some tanks, saying troops are being withdrawn after the conclusion of some military exercises. Amid the uncertainty, American IT executive Heath Morrison decided to move his family here from Kyiv. Are you worried?
I don't feel a huge amount of anxiety right now or worry. I worry a lot for Ukraine. I don't worry for my personal safety.
And you have a son.